The most dangerous conclusion you can make after failure is this: because my assignment was interrupted, my purpose has been cancelled. You made a destructive decision. You violated trust. You lost an opportunity. Perhaps your failure became public, and now people who once celebrated you are discussing you. But listen carefully. Exposure is not extinction. Write this down. Failure reveals a breach between purpose and character, but the breach does not have to become your identity. Suppose an engineer discovers a crack in the foundation of a building. There are two foolish responses. The first is to paint over the crack and pretend nothing happened. The second is to condemn the entire building without inspecting whether it can be restored. Wisdom does neither. Wisdom examines the damage, identifies the cause, repairs the breach, reinforces the structure, and then tests it over time. That is restoration. Some people choose denial. Denial says, it was not serious. Everyone makes mistakes. Let us move on. But what you refuse to confront, you are preparing to repeat. Other people choose shame. Shame says, I am ruined. I can never be useful again. Denial minimizes the damage. Shame magnifies the damage until it becomes your whole identity. Both are enemies of transformation because neither produces honest responsibility. Your failure may cost you a position. It may cost you authority, access, trust, a relationship, or an opportunity that will never return. Consequences are real, but position is not purpose. A title was a vehicle. A platform was a vehicle. A particular assignment was a vehicle. When a vehicle is damaged, the destination does not cease to exist. Now take a deep breath and answer this honestly. Why do you want to be restored? Do you miss serving, or do you miss being seen? Do you miss contributing, or do you miss controlling? Do you want to become trustworthy, or do you merely want people to admire you again? That question will expose whether you are pursuing purpose or protecting ego. There is a way forward, but it is not built on tears, speeches, or promises. It is built on truth, repair, retraining, and consistent evidence. Your failure is real, and it may permanently change your assignment, but it does not possess the authority to define the remainder of your life. Before purpose can be recovered, however, you must identify the voice interpreting your failure. Is it guilt calling you to correct what you did, or shame declaring that who you are can never change? Guilt and shame may speak after the same failure, but they do not deliver the same message. Guilt identifies a violation. It says, I crossed a boundary. I broke trust. I neglected a responsibility. I acted against the standard. Shame goes further and issues a false identity. I am now beyond value, beyond change, and beyond useful service. Write this down. Guilt names the wrong. Shame renames the person. That distinction matters because guilt can become constructive. When the wrong is specific, it can be confessed, it can be examined. Where possible, it can be repaired. The weakness behind it can be retrained. But shame gives you nothing to correct because it condemns your entire existence. It does not point to a broken part of the house, it sets fire to the whole building. Here is the formula. Read it aloud. I did wrong and I must change. That is responsibility. But when you say, I am only what I did, so change is meaningless, that is shame pretending to be humility. Now be careful. Grace is not an escape route from consequences. Refusing to hate yourself does not give you permission to dismiss the people you hurt. Declaring that your life still has value does not restore money, rebuild trust, heal a family, or return lost opportunities. Grace does not make truth unnecessary. Grace gives you the courage to face the truth without being destroyed by it. And never lower the standard to match your circumstances. If you violated the ideal, do not redefine the violation as normal merely because admitting it is painful. Tell the truth about the ordeal, but preserve the ideal. Mature people can say, this is what I did, this is what it damaged, and this is not the standard by which I will continue living. Take a page and draw a line down the center. On the left, write the specific actions, omissions, deceptions, or boundaries for which you are responsible. Facts only. On the right, write every hopeless identity accusation you have accepted. I am worthless. I can never change. I can never serve again. Keep the facts on the left. Challenge the sentences on the right. Perhaps your collapse became public. Public humiliation enlarges the audience, but it cannot do the work of transformation. The crowd cannot confess for you, make restitution for you, discipline your habits, or develop your character. Public opinion is loud, but it is not your restoration process. Your goal is not self-excuse. Your goal is not self-erasure. Your goal is to become truthful, responsible, teachable, and correctable. Once you separate your identity from your failure, you can face the next question clearly. What part of your life was permanently purposed, and what temporary assignment did you actually lose? Let us make this distinction carefully, because confusion here can turn restoration into another form of ambition. Purpose is the enduring contribution your life was designed to make. A gift is a capacity entrusted to you so that you can make that contribution. An assignment is the present form through which you serve. A position is the level of access, influence, or authority granted within that assignment. These things are connected, but they are not identical. Write this down. Purpose is permanent, but positions are conditional. Gifts may remain, but authority must be trusted. You may still be able to teach, lead, organize, create, counsel, or communicate after failure. Ability does not automatically disappear when character collapses. That is precisely why gifted people can remain dangerous. They can still perform while being unprepared to carry the influence their performance creates. Ability is not authorization. Your gift may open a door, but character determines whether you can remain in the room without harming yourself or others. Imagine a vehicle with a powerful engine but broken steering. Would you solve that problem by installing a larger engine? Of course not. More power would only increase the danger. The immediate need is control, alignment, and repair. In the same way, greater visibility cannot cure undeveloped character. A bigger audience cannot heal secrecy. A new title cannot correct dishonesty. Another opportunity cannot replace discipline. If the container is damaged, increasing what it carries only increases the risk. This is where you must examine your desire to get back. Get back to what? To service or to status? To contribution or to control? To helping people or to hearing people praise your name? If restoration only counts when it reproduces your former platform, you may not be pursuing purpose at all. You may be pursuing prominence and calling it purpose. Your next assignment may be quieter. It may involve learning instead of leading, supporting instead of directing, or serving under supervision instead of standing in authority. It may mean caring faithfully for your family, rebuilding trust in your community, mentoring one person with accountability, or developing competence you once neglected because your gift carried you farther than your character could sustain. Do not despise a smaller assignment. Small does not mean insignificant. Hidden does not mean useless. Faithfulness without applause is often the first proof that ego is losing control. Now answer 3 questions. Write them down. First, what value was my life meant to create? Second, whom was that value meant to serve? Third, which parts of my former role expressed purpose and which parts merely fed status? The first evidence of recovered purpose is not a microphone, a title, a crowd, or restored access. It is faithful stewardship of what remains in your hands. Purpose survives position, and service can continue even when authority must wait. But a new assignment cannot be trusted until the old collapse has been understood. What remains unexplained remains available for repetition. So now we must stop speaking vaguely about a mistake and examine exactly how the failure was built. I made a mistake is not an explanation. I was under pressure is not a diagnosis. I lost my way may express regret, but it does not tell you where you turned, why you turned, or why you kept walking after the warning signs appeared. Write this down. Vague failure produces vague correction. If you cannot identify how the collapse was constructed, you cannot know what must be dismantled. Most public failures began as private permissions. First, a false belief was tolerated. Then a small compromise was repeated. The compromise became a hidden habit. The habit found an environment that protected it. A boundary was crossed. A decisive act followed. Finally, damage became visible. That is the failure chain. Belief, compromise, habit, environment, boundary, act, consequence. Now examine every link. Where could you have stopped? What truth did you dismiss? What discomfort did you medicate? What correction did you resist? Perhaps you believed your position entitled you to special treatment. Perhaps you feared rejection, depended on approval, protected resentment, or convinced yourself that your gift excused your lack of discipline. Giftedness never suspends principle. The greater the influence, the greater the responsibility to govern yourself. Yes, pressure matters, fatigue matters, loneliness, conflict, financial strain, isolation, and public expectation can weaken judgment. But pressure exposes the structure. It does not assume responsibility for the choice. If a storm reveals that a roof was poorly secured, do not blame the wind for every loose bolt. Now audit your relationships. Who warned you? Who did you ignore? Who normalized the compromise? Who benefited from keeping you immature? Who comforted you when you needed correction? And whom did you give access to before they demonstrated truth, discipline, and respect for boundaries? Then audit the gates of your life, your time, money, intimacy, communication, authority, rest, and private conduct. Constant depletion is dangerous. Unrestricted access is dangerous. A person who is exhausted, unguarded, and surrounded by enablers is not merely having a difficult season. That person is maintaining conditions in which poor decisions become predictable. You must also distinguish an isolated act from a protected pattern. One failure is serious, but repetition, deception, concealment, and resistance to correction reveal a system. Systems require more than an apology. They require deeper examination, longer retraining, and stronger supervision. Take a page and write the unedited account. Record the choices you made, the warnings you noticed, the people affected, the consequences created, and the conditions that must never be reconstructed. Do not write to protect your image. Write to protect your future. Pain does not automatically become wisdom. Pain becomes wisdom only when it is converted into accurate knowledge and change practice. Now we know how the structure failed. But diagnosis is not restoration. Restoration begins when the truth is spoken without excuse. The first movement is confession. There are 4 movements in genuine restoration: confession, repair, retraining, and demonstrated consistency. Write them down in that order because the order matters. If you skip confession, repair becomes public relations. If you skip repair, retraining becomes private self-improvement with unpaid debts. If you skip retraining, your apology becomes preparation for repetition. And if you refuse the test of time, you are asking people to trust a promise they have not yet seen become character. The first movement is confession. Confession means bringing your spoken account into full agreement with the truth. It names the act, the motive, the pattern, and the damage plainly before God, before the people legitimately affected, and before those responsible for accountability. Now listen carefully. Confession is not the same as exposure. Exposure means the truth caught you. Confession means you stop running from the truth. Discovery happens to you. Confession comes from you. One reveals what you concealed. The other surrenders your right to keep concealing it. Remove evasive language from your mouth. Do not say, "if anyone was hurt." Identify who was hurt and how. Do not say, "that is not who I am." Your repeated choices revealed something in your character that must now be corrected. Do not say, "we both made mistakes," when you are responsible for naming your own conduct. And do not hide behind, "I was going through a difficult season." Context may explain pressure, but it cannot erase choice. Say it plainly. "I did this. I concealed this. I violated this trust. This was the impact. I accept responsibility." And be careful not to turn confession into theater. Tears can be sincere, but tears are not transformation. A trembling voice is not restitution. An emotional speech is not rebuilt character. Fruit must follow feeling. Time must test intention. There may be a proper moment to discuss fatigue, fear, loneliness, resentment, or pressure, because those conditions help diagnose the collapse. But explanation must never arrive as a lawyer hired to defend your image. If your explanation makes the injured person feel obligated to comfort you, you have made your confession another act of self-protection. Truth must reach the appropriate people, not necessarily every curious person. Those harmed require honesty. Those overseeing restoration require access to relevant facts. But confession must not become reckless spectacle that exposes private details, injures others again, or feeds public appetite. And understand the cost. Honest confession may remove access. It may bring discipline, financial responsibility, relational distance, or a long season outside leadership. Accepting those consequences is part of telling the truth. Confession begins the recovery of integrity. Integrity returns when the private story and the spoken story finally agree. But truth only opens the door. It does not repair what passed through it. The second movement asks a harder question. What does responsibility now require toward the people, relationships, and systems that were damaged? Repair means accepting responsibility for consequences and doing what is morally and practically possible to address the damage. It is not a payment that purchases forgiveness. It is not a strategy for recovering your title. It is responsibility expressed through action. Write this down. Remorse feels the damage. Repair faces the damage. A responsible apology contains 4 elements. First, name the wrong. Second, acknowledge its impact. Third, remove every excuse. Fourth, state what you will do to correct what can be corrected. Then stop. Do not add, now you must forgive me. Do not demand a conversation, reconciliation, secrecy, or immediate contact. An apology that controls the response is another form of manipulation. You are responsible for offering truth. The injured person remains free to determine their boundaries. Here is the governing distinction. Forgiveness may be given as grace, but trust must be rebuilt through evidence. Forgiveness and trust are related, but they are not identical. An apology can be spoken in 1 minute. Confidence requires repeated reliability. Think of trust as an account. Every deception, betrayal, broken promise, and misuse of authority makes a withdrawal. When the balance is damaged, another promise does not restore it. Words may declare intention, but only truthful conduct, honored boundaries, restitution, and consistency make deposits over time. Test over time equals trust. What does repair look like? If you took money, return what can be returned. If you spread false information, correct it before the people who received it. If you abused authority, relinquish authority and cooperate with oversight. If you neglected responsibilities, begin fulfilling them without demanding applause. If your behavior exposed others to danger, establish safeguards strong enough to prevent easy repetition. Repair must fit the damage. And some damage cannot be reversed. A person may forgive you and still choose distance. A relationship may end. A former role may remain closed. You have no right to treat another person's access as proof of their spirituality. They do not have to trust you quickly to demonstrate that God has forgiven you. Their boundary may be part of the consequence you must accept. Failure also travels beyond the individual. It unsettles homes, teams, communities, and people who depended on your stability. Therefore, repair may include paying bills you neglected, keeping promises to your children, arriving when you said you would arrive, submitting decisions to review, and rebuilding predictable safety inside the home. Public service cannot compensate for private irresponsibility. Boundaries are not revenge. Restricted access can protect the wounded person, restrain the recovering person, and give truth enough time to be tested. Do not fight every closed door. Some doors are guarding the future. Now create a repair inventory. Ask 4 questions. Who was harmed? What was lost? What can still be restored? What consequence must I accept because it cannot be reversed? And do not substitute unrelated goodness for direct responsibility. Giving money elsewhere does not repay the person you defrauded. Serving strangers does not repair the family you neglected. A public testimony does not settle a private debt. Repair is not measured by how quickly you feel relieved. It is measured by how responsibly you face what your choices produced. But even sincere repair will fail if the same habits, relationships, and conditions remain intact. The third movement is not a return to your old position. It is the retraining of the person who occupied it. Retraining is the deliberate replacement of every belief, habit, relationship, and reaction that helped produce the failure. Remorse looks backward and says, I wish I had not done that. Retraining looks forward and asks, what must change so that I do not become that person again? Write this down. Regret mourns the past. Retraining redesigns the future. This is why a season away from visibility can become valuable. Obscurity exposes your dependence on praise. Silence reveals whether you can remain faithful without recognition. Waiting develops patience. Solitude gives you room to examine motives, sharpen discernment, and learn obedience when nobody is applauding. But listen carefully. Solitude from attention must never become isolation from correction. You may need distance from the crowd, but you still need accountable people close enough to question you. Healthy recovery requires private formation and honest supervision. If nobody can confront you, limit you, inspect your decisions, or tell you no, you have not built accountability. You have built another hiding place. Your retraining plan must match your diagnosis. If money was mishandled, establish financial controls. If secret communication supported the failure, create communication rules and digital restrictions. If unresolved pain shaped your behavior, seek qualified counseling or pastoral care. If exhaustion weakened your judgment, establish rhythms of sleep, rest, prayer, and withdrawal. If conflict exposed immaturity, learn how to listen, disclose, apologize, and disagree without manipulating people. If treatment is appropriate, pursue it. Spiritual language must never become an excuse for rejecting practical help. Now, redesign your environment. Some people comfort you because they love you. Others comfort you because your dysfunction keeps you dependent on them. Learn the difference. Support tells you the truth and helps you grow. Enabling excuses the pattern and calls stagnation compassion. Support respects boundaries. Enabling treats boundaries as betrayal. Support wants you healed. Enabling wants you familiar. Limit access to people who celebrate compromise, protect immaturity, recruit you into confusion, or keep repeating, "That is just who you are." No, that may describe who you have been. It does not dictate who discipline formation can make you. You must also prepare replacement responses before pressure returns. When secrecy feels attractive, disclose. When impulse rises, pause. When approval becomes addictive, consult principle. When correction makes you defensive, invite examination. Do not wait for temptation to design your response. Build the response while your mind is clear. And use your gifts, but use them safely. Serve in low-risk, supervised ways where usefulness matters more than visibility. Help one person. Fulfill one duty. Strengthen your family. Support someone else's work. Let service train your motives while accountability trains your character. Preparation is not wasted time. Foundations are hidden, but they carry everything visible. The greater the responsibility you hope to carry, the stronger your inner structure must become. Retraining creates new capacity, but capacity is still only a claim until it survives pressure, obscurity, correction, and time. The fourth movement is demonstrated consistency. An apology announces intention. Consistency demonstrates transformation. Write that down, because many people confuse the intensity of a moment with the integrity of a life. They cried deeply. They spoke beautifully. They made promises publicly. But emotion cannot perform the work of time, and eloquence cannot substitute for evidence. Fruit is observable conduct repeated under pressure. It is telling the truth when deception would protect your image. It is honoring a boundary when compromise would be convenient. It is serving when nobody knows your name. It is carrying responsibility even while the consequences remain painful. Anybody can behave differently for a week. Character is revealed when the new response becomes your established response. Now understand the people who were affected. You have lived with your private intentions. You know what you feel, what you regret, and what you hope to become. They cannot inspect your intentions. They can evaluate only your conduct and the safety they experience around you. Do not become angry because their confidence moves more slowly than your desire. Responsibility must expand in stages. First, govern your personal disciplines. Then honor small commitments. Next, serve under meaningful accountability. Only later should broader influence be considered, and only if it is wise, safe, and invited. After Peter's failure, renewed commitment was connected to repeated responsibility. His love was not treated as a slogan. It was directed toward faithful service. But do not misuse that example to demand your former authority. Restoration always calls you back to faithfulness. It does not always return you to the same office. Your accountability must also be real. It needs clear standards, scheduled reviews, access to relevant facts, permission to challenge your decisions, and define consequences when boundaries are violated. And hear me carefully. There must be no retaliation against the person who raises an honest concern. If people are punished for questioning you, you do not have accountability. You have an audience. Some people ask, how long must I keep proving myself? That question may expose the very problem still hiding underneath the recovery. Why are you measuring the time? Are you eager to become dependable or merely impatient to regain status? Ask a better question. What does faithfulness require today? Welcome measurement. Welcome review. Welcome the questions that make secrecy difficult. Accountability is not an insult to grace. It is a structure that prevents grace from being turned into another excuse. If the change is genuine, examination will not destroy it. Examination will reveal it. Test over time equals trust. Credible change eventually becomes predictable. You are not proven because you never feel pressure again. You are proven because under familiar pressure, you now choose a different response. Consistency can recover integrity. It can rebuild confidence. It can establish a new character. But it cannot reverse every consequence. The next test is whether you can accept a faithful future that may never reproduce the life you had before. Now we arrive at one of the hardest truths in restoration. Changed character does not guarantee restored circumstances. A marriage may end. A position may remain closed. Money may never return. Legal or organizational consequences may continue. Some people may forgive you and still decide that you will never again have the access you once possessed. Write this down. Forgiveness can release the debt without reversing the damage. Do not accept the false promise that restoration always means getting everything back exactly as it was. That idea sounds hopeful, but it can produce entitlement. It can make you believe that if you have apologized, repaired what you could, and demonstrated change, everyone now owes you the future you prefer. No, restoration is not control. Restored character means you have become truthful where you were deceptive, disciplined where you were careless, dependable where you were unstable, and humble where you were entitled. Restored circumstances mean the former conditions have returned. The first may occur even when the second never does. And you are allowed to grieve that. Acceptance does not mean pretending the loss is painless. It means refusing to use pain as permission for bitterness, manipulation, renewed secrecy, or self-destruction. You can mourn what was lost without demanding that other people rebuild it for you. Remember the distinction between purpose and assignment. If one vehicle is permanently unavailable, purpose still asks, what value can this changed life create now? Whom can I serve responsibly with what remains in my hands? Perhaps the answer is quieter than you expected. You may serve without authority, contribute without ownership, and help people without being publicly recognized. Do not despise that season. Service without applause may be the clearest evidence that purpose has replaced ego. Your failure may leave a scar. A scar is not the wound, and it is not your identity. It is information. It reminds you where you were vulnerable, which safeguards must remain, and why humility can never become optional. Remember the lesson without renaming yourself after the injury. Now release the outcome you have been trying to control. Release the demand for reconciliation when another person chooses distance. Release the demand for leadership when an institution says no. Release the demand for recognition when quiet faithfulness is the assignment now available. Say it plainly. I will remain faithful even if my former status never returns. That is maturity. Maturity remains obedient when forgiveness does not erase consequence, when growth does not reopen every door, and when purpose does not restore position. Now the past has been faced, the damage addressed, and entitlement surrendered. The final question is practical. How do you re-enter useful service without rebuilding the conditions that produced the failure? Now let us put the entire process into one governing law. Tell the truth, repair the damage, retrain the person, demonstrate consistency, and accept only the assignment that your character can now carry safely. Restoration is not an event, it is a covenant. Write your covenant. Do not leave it in your imagination. Name the exact pattern that produced your failure. Record the boundaries that are no longer negotiable. Identify the people authorized to question you. List every obligation of restitution. Define your warning signs. and decide in advance what you will do when temptation, exhaustion, resentment, or pressure returns. A decision made before pressure is stronger than a promise made during panic. For the first 30 days, pursue truth and stabilization. Complete your failure inventory. Make every appropriate disclosure. Submit to legitimate oversight. Remove high-risk access. Begin the repair you owe. Do not use this period to announce a comeback. Use it to stop the instability. For the next 60 days, concentrate on retraining and ordinary responsibility. Practice your replacement habits. Keep small promises. Arrive on time. Honor boundaries. Serve without recognition. Ask trusted overseers to document what they observe, including the areas where you remain defensive, inconsistent, or vulnerable. Then use the following 90 days for evidence and evaluation. Review your patterns. Measure reliability. Identify remaining risks. Let those responsible for oversight decide whether your duties should remain limited, expand gradually, or be redirected. Do not grade your own restoration. Before accepting any new responsibility, apply 5 tests. Is this service genuinely useful? Is it safe for the people affected? Is active accountability in place? Can I do it faithfully in obscurity? Would I continue if my former title never returned? If your answer to the last question is no, ego may still be negotiating with purpose. Now read this commitment aloud. I choose truth over image, character over platform, responsibility over entitlement, and purpose over position. I will not demand trust. I will live truthfully until my conduct becomes trustworthy. And to every leader, parent, mentor, and community responsible for others, do not excuse wrongdoing in the name of compassion, but do not permanently discard a person who submits to truth, repair, discipline, and time. Grace without standards enables destruction. Standards without hope make restoration impossible. Mature leadership preserves both. Your failure may have exposed what success allowed you to hide. Let truth develop what applause never did. Lost authority can become deeper integrity. A changed assignment can still produce a faithful life. Your contribution may look different, but different does not mean meaningless. The past explains why safeguards are necessary. It does not possess the right to name your future. Let consistent character, not your worst moment, determine what your renewed life becomes.